Thank you, Pastor Fields. Appreciate that. At this time, we'll call our meeting to order. Mrs. Gray, would you please do the roll call, please?
Mr. Allen?
Here.
Mr. McClellan?
Here.
Mr. Melcher?
Here.
Mr. Wall?
Here.
Mrs. Heim? Here. Mr. Carl?
Here.
Okay, we do not have any revisions of agenda for this evening, so we'll go to B1. This is the reorganization part of our meeting this evening. So school board, what we're going to do now is the following, is that I will seek nominations for board president. There could be more than one name. Once we have done all of the names, I'll ask to close, ask for a motion to close this part of it, and then we will vote accordingly. So do I have any names for consideration for nominations for president of our school board?
Mr. Trout, I'd nominate Tim Allen for president of the school board.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Wall. We have Tim Allen. Do we have any other nominations for board president? Okay. Hearing none, I would take a motion to close the nominations for school board president. Do I have that motion?
Make a motion to close the nominations for board president.
We got a motion by Mr. Wall to close the nomination. Do we have a second?
Second.
Any discussion before we do this? Okay, we'll go ahead and place the vote. All in favor of closing the vote signify by saying aye. Or wait, this is John, old school. Sorry, whoops. I just got the look from Mrs. Gray. I am so sorry. Okay, let's vote on the nomination, to close the nominations. My face is as red as this mug right now, Cindy. Close the nominations for board president.
We were just going to roll with it, John.
I know you were. Okay. I'm sorry.
You have the ability to make that change.
Okay. That motion passes 6-0. Okay. At this time now, what we'll do is that we have a nomination on the floor for Tim Allen for consideration for board president. At this time, we'll take a vote on that nomination. Okay, I thought the motion was with the nomination, but do I have a nomination to make it work in board docs? I understand. Do I have a nomination for, do I have a motion, thank you, for Tim Allen to be president of the school board? Tim, you can't get up front here fast enough. Okay, do I have a motion?
I make a motion that we approve Tim Allen as president for HCCSC for the year 2025.
Year 2025. Do I have a second?
Second.
Second by Mr. Melcher. Do we have any discussion? Okay, let's vote. Thank you. Mr. Allen, I want to say congratulations to you. How about a nice round of applause for Mr. Tim Allen, the new school board president? Congratulations to you, Tim. Congratulations. So, Tim, I graciously turn the rest of the agenda over to you since I did such a swimming job on this part. And so you will start with agenda item
B3.
B4.
Thank you, Mr. Trout. Thank you, board. Let's get to work.
B4, do we have any nominations for Vice President?
I nominate Ryan Wall for Vice President.
Mr. Wall for Vice President. Thank you, Mr. Melcher. Any other nominations for Vice President? Okay, I can take a motion then to,
Close.
do I need to motion him to nomination? Motion to close the nominations.
So moved.
Thank you, Mr. Melcher. Can I get a second?
Second.
Thank you, Ms. Heim. So we've closed the nominations for Vice President. It's time to elect our Vice President.
We got to
No,
vote
we
on
gotta
that
vote.
first.
Vote on closing the nomination.
We got to vote on that too?
Yes.
Give us a chance here, guys.
Okay.
This should be a good one.
Yeah. You got to close them. Yeah.
So we'll vote on closing the nomination.
We got to think about streamlining this process at some point.
Passes 6-0. I will now take a motion for Ryan Wall as Vice President.
I'll make a motion, Ryan Wall for Vice President.
Thank you, Mr. Melcher. And a second for that.
Second.
Thank you, Ms. Heim. Any discussion, comments from the board? Okay, let's vote on the motion. The motion is 5 with 1 abstain. Congratulations, Mr. Wall. At this time, we'd move on to item B7, nominations for secretary. Does anyone like to make a nomination for someone for secretary?
I nominate Gary McClellan for Secretary.
Mr. McClellan, anyone else? All right, anybody like to make a motion to close the nominations?
I will make a motion to close the nominations for Secretary.
Thank you, Mr. Melcher. A second, anyone?
Second.
Mr. Wall, thank you. Any comments or questions? Hearing none, let's vote on closing the nomination. That passes 5 with 1 abstain. Congratulations, Mr. McClellan.
You got to close. You got to vote on that.
Now we got to vote on it.
Oh, that's right.
Yep.
I'm skipping. Could anybody like to make a motion for Mr. McClellan as secretary?
I will make a motion that Gary McClellan for Secretary.
Thank you, Mr. Melcher. Would anybody like to be second?
Second.
Thank you, Mr. Wall. Any comments or questions prior to voting? We will vote on the motion. Vote is 5-1 for Mr. McClellan, 1 abstaining. Thank you, Mr. McClellan. Congratulations.
I want to thank the three of you and the school board. A mark of a great school board is great leadership, and we are blessed this year to have the three of you in leadership positions. And so I just want to publicly say thank you for your willingness to serve. What we would like to do at this time is get a picture of all three of you. since you look so good in your suits and things today. So what we'll do is that if you guys could come up front, Kenny is going to take your picture so we can put that out into the community by tomorrow.
All right, moving on. Move on to item C1, core values.
The highlight of every school board meeting for me is when we have an opportunity to honor our students and our staff, and tonight is no exception. And so, Mr. McLaughlin is going to lead us through this part. Chuck, if you and a couple school board members could join us up front as we recognize these fine individuals, we'll go through this part of our agenda. So, Pat, I'll turn it over to you.
Thank you, Mr. Trout. Tonight, I'm honored to present this segment of the meeting, highlighting how our core values of Huntington County Community Schools are reflected in the remarkable achievements of our students within our district. The first group that we will be representing tonight is the Crestview Middle School Spell Bowl. Our commitment to student-centered excellence is exemplified by the outstanding performance of the Crestview Middle School Spell Bowl team. Guided by their dedicated coaches, Mary Musselman and Cheryl Sims, the team earned the regional title at the area final held at Indian Springs on November the 6th. Before I share more about their success, I'd like to invite the team members and their coaches to join us at the front for a photo opportunity. As I read your name, please come forward. Aubrey Adams, Harper Bauer, Victoria Cox, Moxie Henderson, Avery Klingenberger, Julius Jemison, Quinn Justice, Gracie Maxwell, Lyric Murphy, Alyssa Somerlot, Cadence Waldron, Nolan Zaire, and the Crestview Spell Bowl coaches, Coach Mary Musselman and Coach Cheryl Sims. little bit more information about the Spell Bowl team. Guided by their coaches, the team earned a regional title at the area final at Indian Springs. The team's success was driven by a remarkable performance by 7th grader Nolan Zare, who led the team with an incredible achievement as only one of 2 perfect spellers at the match. He accomplished that by spelling all 9 words correctly. Nolan's leadership and focus were instrumental in the team securing first place in Class 2 and later placing an impressive 18th at state. As we celebrate these achievements, I extend my deepest congratulations to the Crestview Middle School Spell Bowl team, their dedicated coaches. Thank you to all the family members who continue to support their students' passions and interests. Together, they embody the core values of Huntington County Community Schools, reminding us of the incredible potential within every student. Congratulations. Now we have the Crestview Middle School Robotics team. It is always a privilege to recognize the outstanding accomplishments of our students and staff. Tonight I'm excited to highlight the achievements of the Crestview Middle School Robotics team, who have showcased remarkable talent, teamwork, and innovation this season. Before I share more about their success, we'd like to invite the team members and their coaches to come forward for a photo opportunity. When I read your name, please come to the front. Start with Emery Cox. Weston Detmer. Detmer. Weston Detmer. It's right there. It's the one on the bottom. Race Ellett. Gavin Goff. And Max Stouter. And we'd also like to invite their coaches to come up. Coach Travis Bollinger, John Bordeaux, Liana Walter, and Tom Stouter. This talented group of students competed at their very first event of the season at the Jay County competition. In an extraordinary achievement, they qualified for the Indiana State VEX Robotics competition, which will take place at Lucas Oil Stadium on Saturday, March 22nd. Their success is a testament to the dedication and hard work of the students, as well as the leadership and support of their coaches. Together, this team has exemplified the innovative spirit and collaborative mindset that are the hallmarks of excellence in Huntington County Community Schools. Robotics competitions demand a high level of problem solving, technical skill, and teamwork, and this team has risen to the challenge. Their success not only reflects their talent, but also highlights the growing opportunities in STEM education within our district. Congratulations.
Thank you, Mr. McLaughlin. We'll move on now to D1, items from visitors, public comment. This is an opportunity for members of the community to address the board. We have one signed up right now, Mr. Van Gorder.
hear me?
Yes, sir.
All right. Good evening, Superintendent Trout, members of the board, members of the administration. Welcome to 2025. I want to first extend good luck to Mr. Carl. Looking forward to what he'll do for this board. Also want to thank Mr. Ryan Wall for having the courage to vote no on the Russ Deget's hire. For the rest of you, I feel like you guys rushed this hire. I feel like he was the wrong choice. I feel like his baggage from Huntington University showed that he is not the right candidate for this job. You guys rushed this through. You lost a board member in the process who resigned, and District 2 lost their voice. Tomorrow, they are not represented in the election. So I hope you guys take that to heart and understand your actions have consequences. Thank you.
I just want to say thank you to the students who attended and parents. If you would like to stay for the rest of the meeting, you are more than welcome to stay. However, if you do not want to, this would be a great opportunity to exit at this point in time. So thank you for coming.
Thank you to everyone else. We will move on now to item E1, School Board Reorganization, Appointment of Treasurer.
At this time, School Board, I recommend to you that Alex Eckert would serve as our corporation treasurer. Alex was also the treasurer, just for reference, in school year 2024.
Thank you, Mr. Trout. Would anyone like to make a motion reference the treasurer position?
I'll make a motion to have Alex Eckert serve as corporation treasurer for 2025.
Thank you, Mr. Melcher. Do I have a second? Thank you, Mr. McClellan. Any comments or questions before we vote? Hearing none, let's vote on the motion for Alexandria Eckert to serve as corporation treasurer. That passes 6-0. And moving on to E2, board members' compensation.
Okay, School Board, what you will find in your board packet for this evening is that what has been placed in there is guidelines as spelled out by the Indiana State Board Association. Under the board organization requirements, paragraphs 2 states the following. Board members may receive up to $2,000 per year for their service per diem. That's in section Indiana Code 20-26-4-7. For those school boards that have adopted per diem rates for attendance at school board meetings, the maximum rate for 2025 continued to be $150 for regular meetings, and those meetings are established by the board here, and then $75 for other meetings such as special meetings, executive sessions, and committee meetings. That you, as board members, may receive up to $2,000 per year for your service, per diem, $75 for other meetings, as stated. And so last year, just so you can reference that from what we did last year, is that you as a school board receive $2,000 for your services plus a per diem for $62 for all other meetings. So you can see some of the slight changes for 2025, and I just, as you're making that decision about your compensation, I just want to put all those details out in front of you.
Just to add a little bit, that amount went up mid-year last year, and we chose
Correct.
not to change it at that time.
Correct. You chose not to correct at that point. In other words, we were waiting to this meeting to make this decision for calendar year 25, but you are correct, Mr. Wall.
Before I take a motion, is there any further comments or discussion? Anybody have any ideas what they'd like to say about it? I'll take a motion for compensation for next year, for this year.
I make a motion that the board receive $2,000 annually and $75 for all regular, special, and executive sessions for 2025.
Thank you, Mr. Melcher. Can I get a second?
Second.
Thank you, Mr. Wall. Any comments or discussion now that we've got that? Hearing none, we will vote on the motion to move it to $2,000 annually and $75 per meeting. Motion passes 6-0. Moving on to E3, appointment of legislative liaison.
Last year, Mr. Wall served as legislative liaison, just so as you're making a decision as a board moving forward this year. He was our representative last year.
And as much as it's been fun doing that with my other duties that I'm going to be working with ISBA, I would really appreciate it if someone else, one of the newer board members, we typically handed that to one of the newer board members. So, and I'll tell you the duties of the board liaison, just so you know. Typically, you would attend the ISBA State House Day that is February 18th this year, and then you are just the point person for any legislative action coming out of ISBA, or if there are any call to actions, that you would just make sure that the rest of the board is aware of those actions. You will also probably, all of us will get an email from ISBA, but it is something that can be done. It doesn't take too much time other than the day down at the State House, and it is a fun time down at the State House getting to know your legislators and hear what's going on with the legislation that's coming through.
Thoughts?
You do need a representative. So,
Mr. Carl?
I do believe that the newest board member will be elected sometime later this week.
Good point.
that's very good, Aaron.
It is a shame that that they have not been voted yet.
And if no one wants to do it, I don't mind continuing to do it, but I would hope that maybe next year that we could have someone else do it. It's a fun time. I enjoy doing it, and I would probably still keep you all informed anyway of what's going on. So if that is the case, I could take it for one more year, but I would gladly love to have maybe like a co-liaison at some point.
We appreciate that, Mr. Wall.
My original motion was to have Ryan Wall be legislative liaison, so if he's going to make that comment.
If that's your motion,
That is my motion.
can I have a second? Mr. McClellan, well done. Any questions or comments, except from Mr. Wall?
Sorry, Ryan, you got one more year.
Thanks, Ryan.
That's fine. I almost made the motion to make it Tim, so it's good.
No comments or questions. We will vote on the motion. Motion passes 6-0. Moving on to E4, appointment of bid opening committee.
Yes, I'm recommending that myself as a superintendent or my designee and the corporation treasurer serve on the bid opening committee for 2025. This is the exact same arrangement that we had in 2024.
Thank you, Mr. Trout. Anybody like to make a motion on that?
Make a motion that we appoint the superintendent or his designee and the corporation treasurer to serve on the big opening committee for the calendar year 2025.
Thank you, Mr. Wall. Anybody second?
Second.
Thank you, Mr. McClellan. Mr. McClellan, I'm afraid you're quicker. Any comments or questions before we vote? Hearing none, we'll vote on the motion. The vote is 6-0 in favor. Thank you, Mr. Trout. Moving on to E5.
Yes, this is the appointment of the Common Wage Committee. I'm recommending that myself as a superintendent or my designee serve as the community representative on the Common Wage Committee, name of business, industry representative, and coordinate the wage committee meetings as they become necessary throughout 2025. This is the exact same arrangement we had in 2024.
Thank you, Mr. Trout. Would anybody like to make a motion reference the Common Wage Committee?
I make a motion the superintendent or his designee serve on the serve on the community representative on the Common Wage Committee
Thank you, Mr. Melcher, for 2025.
for 2025.
Thank you. And a second?
Second. Second.
Thank you, Ms. Heim. Any question? Do you need the rest?
Does that include naming a business industry
Name
representative?
a business, industry, and representative to coordinate the wage committee meetings as they become necessary throughout 2025.
Still second.
Thank you both.
There is some question. We have not had to do that during my tenure here, but in case it does become a necessity, we need to have this appointment made. I'm not anticipating it even in 2025, but just in case it does, legally we have to have this appointment made.
And just as, if I remember correctly, and you may not know, but that's only if we have a construction project that meets a certain threshold in dollar value? Is that
Correct.
Okay.
Correct. That is absolutely correct.
Any further comment or questions? Hearing none, we'll vote on the motion. Vote is unanimous, 6-0. Moving on to E6, appointment of school board attorney.
Yes, I am recommending this evening the reappointment of Mr. Joseph Wiley to continue as our school board attorney. I've appreciated Joe's continual support on this board, for this board within that. And so, Joe, next upcoming year would be how many years? 20? Okay, would be Joe's 20th year of serving in that. Just so you remember that last year we adjusted the rate and it's $175 per hour. So I'm recommending this for your approval this evening.
Thank you, Mr. Trout. Would anybody like to make a motion regarding appointment of the school attorney?
I make a motion that we reappoint Mr. Joseph Whaley to continue as school board attorney as presented at the current rate.
Thank you, Mrs. Heim. And a second?
Second.
Thank you, Mr. Wall. Any comments or questions prior to voting?
I just want to thank Mr. Wiley for his continued support that we've been using him a little bit lately, and thank you for all your help.
Any other comments? Let's vote on the motion. Motion passes 6-0. Thank you, Mr. Wiley. Congratulations, I think. Thank you. I'll move on to the consent agenda. Item F.
Yes, items F 1 through 5 for your consideration this evening. I'll draw attention to item number 4, which is the request to accept donations. At this meeting, we're accepting donations of $10,455. I continue to be grateful for all our community partners as they come alongside and help us in so many ways in our community, so thank you to them. And so I am just seeking your approval of regular board meeting minutes from December 16th, professional leave request, personnel report, request to accept donations, and the accounts payable and payroll voucher registers.
Thank you, Mr. Trout. Would anyone like to make a motion on the consent agenda?
I make a motion to approve the consent agenda as presented.
Thank you, Mr. Melcher. And a second? Thank you, Mr. McClellan. Would anyone like to remove anything from the consent agenda and vote on it separately? Are any questions or comments on the consent agenda? Hearing none, we'll vote on the consent agenda. Motion passes 6-0. We will now close our regular meeting and open the...
We're going to actually suspend it.
Suspend the regular meeting and open meeting of the Board of Finance.
Yes, let me walk you through this evening, Board. This section of our meeting, as we suspend our regular meeting, is the Board of Finance meeting of the Huntington County Community School Corporation. This meets the requirements of Indiana Code 5-13-7, local boards of finance. And so, Board, this is what we're going to do this evening in this section of our agenda. The first thing we're going to do, first item we're going to do, as you can see there under G1, is elect a president and secretary of the Board of Finance. It's not uncommon that you could do this in one motion, where you could have the same individuals holding these offices as we just elected this evening. And so you need to do two. We could do it in all in one motion, which would be a president and a secretary, okay, for the Board of Finance. The second part this evening you're going to do is receive and review the investment report required by Section 7 of Indiana Code 5-13-7. The third item we're going to do is review the investment policy of the school district. This is policy 6144, which was revised by the board on 3/23/20. Our treasurer has reviewed the investment policy and would not recommend changes to this at this time. And then we'll also, number 4, then receive and discuss the report assessing the financial conditions of HCCSC using the fiscal and qualitative indicators determined by Indiana Code 20-19-7-4, which is the DUAB report. So the first item, Mr. Allen, would be the election of the board officers, as I mentioned previously, which is to elect a president and secretary of the Board of Finance, which could be the same individuals that you approve this evening if you so choose.
All right. Before we take the motion, anybody have any questions about what Mr. Trout just laid on us? Okay. Anybody like to make a motion on the election of the officers for the Board of Finance?
Make a motion that we appoint Tim Allen as president of the Board of Finance and have Gary McClellan serve as secretary of the Board of Finance for the calendar year 2025.
Thank you, Mr. Wall. And a second?
Second.
Thank you, Mr. Melcher. Any comments or questions before we vote? Hearing none, we'll vote on the motion. Motion passes 6-0. Moving on to G2.
Okay, Mrs. Smith called me about 3 o'clock this afternoon and is quite ill. So yours truly is going to walk you through this part of the board meeting today. Let's do first things first. Let's look at the investment report that Mrs. Gray is pulling up here this evening. So this is truly an overview, what I'm giving you this evening of where we are with regards to our financial well-being as a district, okay? And so for 2024, the Huntington School Corporation has no investments in CDs. And so we've had this conversation before where this is a potential of something that we may want to look at going into this year. But as we sit here today, we do not have any CDs. From time to time, I'm questioned about that in the community, but it's just important to know that currently. Doesn't mean that we may not move that direction in the future, but it's just where we stand currently. The money invested is from the total monies of deposit, commonly referred to as TOD, from the HCCSC funds. The interest earned in 2024. You can see that earnings on Corp Bank accounts, we earned an interest slightly over $1 million. Their certificates of deposit, as we said, is 0. External construction accounts is a little over $340,000 for a grand total of $1.374 million for this. The cash balance, what people in our community may not understand, we are doing quite well. The cash balance as of December 31st, 2024 is slightly over $50 million there at that time, with about 5.9 million as bonds held, amount held by the U.S. Bank, and about $44 million plus with Everwise, or TCU is what was commonly referred to. The current interest rate at U.S. Bank is 2.45%. And if you remember toward the fall of, was it last year where we did a new agreement with Everwise, we are at 4% currently on our interest rates with that. Our bank activity, we changed banks. I'm asked this a lot. When did we actually change banks? We changed banks back in 2019 and 20. Everwise is now the primary bank for the district. We are receiving customary interest rates on all our accounts with Everwise, but we still could utilize Trust Indiana or the Hoosier Fund, which I send you information about that from time to time, just to keep you up to speed. These two options are very liquid investment pools and would allow the district to move money in and out of these investment pools within 1 to 2 business days. So as we continue to move forward, we began having discussions at the end of last year that our cash balance is just roughly a little over $50 million at this point in time. So Mrs. Smith and I have already have begun to have discussions about this to share with you in the near future. And so we just wanted to make you privy to that information today. The fiscal condition of our school corporation based on the fiscal and qualitative indicators determined under Indiana Code 20-19-7-4, which is the 2024 DUAB. DUAB stands for Distressed Unit Appeals Board Report. Okay? In your packet, you have those 7 indicators. So they are for our district. For the 2023-24 report, there are 7 fiscal indicators that our community can locate that have been developed. They are our average daily membership, which we take twice a year in October and in February. Our demographics, our fund balances, our annual deficit and surpluses, our fund balances as a percentage of expenditures, our revenue by type, and our operating referendum revenue as a percent of total revenue, which we all know what that number is. It's 0 within that. What Becky has done here is given you a brief overview of all 7 of those. As you know, we've talked a lot about this over the years. If you look at it in total over the last 9 years, we've had some decline in enrollment, which we are trying to address. We've had some recent successes with that. But if you look at it over a 9-year term, we have had a declining enrollment with our average daily membership. The demographics, there's a history of 3 areas: free and reduced lunch, special education, English language learners. If you look at that report in there, you'll notice that our free and reduced numbers have increased greatly, while our other numbers remain stable. We're just recently have seen quite an uptick with our ELL numbers. I believe when we do this report the next time, you'll see a rather significant difference with that. When Mr. Peters and Mr. Brimberry come and talk to you about programming this spring, ELL will be a focus of some of the things that we're going to have to look at a little differently in the very near future within that. Fund balances have increased over the last several years, mostly due to the added funding with CARES and ESSER grants. If you look at those reports within those fund balances that you can pull up, I've got a copy here that's before me. Within that, we're doing quite well in these areas. The annual deficit and surpluses, this indicator is a graph showing if the district's fund balances are increasing or decreasing year to year. I think that what you will find is that you will be very happy with those pieces with that. And so, and it's really confusing because sometimes these ESSER grant dollars can really throw some of this data away. I mean, not away, but it can really distort the data just because of these ESSER dollars that were there. The fifth area there is the fund balances, and you'll see what we've highlighted there versus this percentage of expenditures showing an increase over the last few years until major construction projects are completed and paid for. There are some significant construction projects that Mr. McLaughlin will be leading us through this summer, and then when we'll come back to this area number 5 here once we can get those completed. Revenue by type, again, it shows an increase due to ESSER grants through 2024. We'll stabilize after that, and obviously we do not have any type of operating referendum, okay? Again, you in your school board packet there have all of this information that's available to you. I am very happy with where we're currently at today, but right now for the public to see, if you go on this DUAB section, this is what you will see, okay? There's a incredible amount of information there. You know, there's much talk in our community, for example, about the net assessed value and where we're at. We're just shy of 37,000 people here too. And then if you scroll on down, you'll see all of these things that I am talking about. There's the 9-year plan, the 9-year ADM numbers along the way. And I'm not going to read all this to you, but this is what you have access to, what we put in your board packet. As Cindy scrolls on down there, here are our demographics, and I just so slightly touched on this, but you can see that our recent uptick in free and reduced lunch numbers, you can say that we're pretty stagnant around that 17, 18. Sometimes we touch the 20, but you can see we're slightly over 20% with special education. The gray bar down here doesn't look like much now, but it has begun to increase here quickly by the month, quite frankly. And so that's what I mentioned, that Mr. Peters and Mr. Brimberry will come and talk to you about that later this spring. Fund balances here. This is, we could spend an enormous amount of time here, but this gives you a little indication how fiscally responsible you have been as a board, especially if you look at the last 2 to 3 years in comparison within that, and I appreciate your fiscal responsibility in those areas, but this is what's reported and what our public can see. Okay, as we move on here, the annual deficit and surplus, again, it's pretty much self-explanatory with this chart and graph. You can see the green is the revenues, the blue is the expenditures, the yellow is the deficit surplus, and the fund balances. So we're doing very well within all of those, in all those areas as we mark this month to month.
I would
so-
like to,
Go ahead.
Mr. Trout, just want to call that out because it does look like we spent more money than we should
Right.
in that. But that was a plan that the board put together because if you look at the prior years, we had a significant surplus there.
Yep.
So we're actually trying to burn down some of that surplus. So
Yes.
that was a conscious decision, I think,
Yep.
that everyone on the board, and that was specifically I wanted to call out for Mr. Carl. But we chose to do that to keep our surplus in line. Because you notice 4 years prior to that, we had significantly growing surpluses. So we're trying to burn down some of that excess
Yep.
cash in the general fund. So
That's true. Thank you, Mr. Walt. Fund balance as a percent, and again, I don't want to keep talking to all of this, but I appreciate where we're at and what we're doing and how fiscally responsible we're going to be. Mrs. Smith and I spend a lot of time each month making sure that we are playing within the parameters that you have set out for us, and we are doing that. Again, the next slides, and not to belabor this, but revenue by type. This is a pretty fascinating chart and graph as a whole. It just lets you see where our revenue streams are actually coming from. And again, we could spend hours on each one of these charts along the way. But as you as a board, go ahead, Cindy, you as a board can see that all of this is there. Obviously, we do not have an operating referendum fund. We just don't have one. And so this is all this information. So I believe I have sufficed everything that we have there. You have in your board packet the two investment policies I want to just go through today for you is, if you'll notice that 0151.1, which is the Board of Finance and the Huntington County Community School Corporation, that was just updated last March. Okay, so we worked through that process with you back then. So that's just recently been updated within the last year. And then also the investment income piece was done 4 years plus now. December was last reviewed March 23rd of 2020 is when we have done that one. And we'll be set to go through that one again here shortly. So I am just bringing out in front of you, this is the investment income piece that I'll be working through with you coming up. So at some point in time within this, Ryan just kind of touched on this ever so briefly, but we're going to have to put a few more details together for that. So that's what I have, and Becky had put together for you this evening. I'd be happy to entertain any questions at this point in time.
I would just like to commend Mrs. Smith. I think this is the best Board of Finance report that we've had. It helps out.
Thank you, Ryan. Other comments, questions? Be happy to answer some. So hearing none, Mr. Allen, we'll move on to G3, which is just adjournment of the Board of Finance.
All right, we're going to adjourn the Board of Finance meeting and reopen the regular meeting.
So I just need a motion and a second and a vote then, please.
Did anybody make a motion to adjourn the Board of Finance?
I'll make a motion that we adjourn the Board of Finance.
And a second?
Second.
Thank you, Mr. Melcher and Mr. Wall. Any question or comments before we vote? Let's vote on the motion.
Hey, Aaron, do you want to help him out?
Motion passes 6-0. Move on to reopen the regular meeting and move on to H1, document scanning agreement between HCCS and Ausdall and Farrar.
Yes, this evening we have Mr. Mike Sumpter, who is the Director of Technology here, who is going to present to you and ask for your approval of a new document scanning agreement between us and Ausdall Farrar. I hope I said that right. Did I say that right?
You did.
Okay. And so, Mike, thank you. Go over some of the particulars with us this evening so we have a better understanding of what the board is voting on tonight.
Absolutely. Back in late 2023, when school board made the decision to purchase ReadyMed and make the move, we had an opportunity to digitize all the boxes of paper that we've collected over all the years. So in the beginning of that process, we wanted to inventory what we had. And of course, student records, some teacher documents student records were all being digitized anyway, and then the teacher files were not. That was paper. And I believe we have papers going clear back 1800s, probably back there in the back. Amazing some of the documentation that we have collected over the years. Because of that, though, we chose to work with State Board of State Records and Retention, and in doing that, we had a little program we put together, started going down the road of that. Stopping there, we hired a consultant, or worked with a consultant rather, on who do we pick to help us with this initiative? Who do we work with? What companies are out there to assist us? And how soon can they get records scanned? In working with that consultant, we put out asking for quotes. Only 2 bidders came back, and the lowest bid was Ausdall Farrar. In that directive back then, we wanted to take off and go, stay with the same company. We wouldn't have any procedural changes, workflow changes, and it just made sense to move forward with one vendor for the entire project. What started out as only 91 records, then turned into allow conversion, which meant here's another opportunity to bring all those teacher documents, all the teacher records, anything teacher related, administrator related, we can stick that all into allow, and now we have all one-stop shop, all the data is there. So that started phase 2. Phase 3 will be the last remnants of what's in the back room at Salamone, and then hopefully that'll wipe out all of the documents that we have left. Everything will be digitized, and moving forward, anything that we have from a student record in the beginning, when new students come in, secretaries can scan it, and it goes immediately into PowerSchool, and now everything is digital from this point forward. It'll take us maybe 4 or 5 years for all the grade levels to get caught up with the scanning as we work on that, but that's something we'll work with administration. So the quote that you see in front of you is for phase 3. That will be the remainder of the student records from last school year, and then all of the records that we had in the back vault going clear back to almost a little bit 1800. I think we found one document. And so, so we're going to try to preserve as much as we can within a financial reason, though. I mean, we could have probably spent $500,000, but it just isn't. Some of it we had to make some decisions on. So
in your board packet, what you will see is a pricing estimate of $160,825. What I wanted to draw your attention to is the project scope of our vault and storage room. We're looking at a total of 423 small banker boxes. We have slightly over almost $1.2 million images that we're going to try to play catch up on here. This is, I appreciate Mike's work with the state and making sure that we're meeting all the requirements along the way, but this is decades upon decades upon decades of work, of records that we're going to try to bring up to speed for all of these. So our recommendation to you this evening is to accept this quote.
Thank you, Mr. Trout. Mr. Sumpter, quick question. How is all this that's being scanned? I know you have it backed up several different ways, so that, and when being an old guy, I think paper's always been around. So
right, sure.
So you talk about getting rid of it.
Right.
What's the plan to make sure it's protected forever?
Great question. So when Ausdall provides us a link to their a secure FTP site, and then we will download it from there. We'll store it into Google Drive for right now. The teacher records, administrator records, those will be immediately uploaded into LAO, which is a system that we have on site. That system is being backed up currently in 3 different places. And so that's one of the really neat things in working with records, the state of Indiana records and retention. They really were fascinated by what we're trying to store and how we're storing it. And so there is going to be 3 backups for anything that's on-prem or here. And then Google Drive, of course, that's the largest. That's unlimited for us. So for those student records at the moment, we will keep those there, but then once our PowerSchool is set up and we've worked with administration, secretaries, we rolled out everything, it'll go right into that same backup as the LAO system. So we will have 3 different areas that are being backed up constantly, and we're protected in 3 different locations too. So one of those being cloud, so it makes it really nice for us.
And we are required by law to keep paper copies depending upon, because there's different time frames we have to keep different documents for, up to and including, it can vary depending upon what employee group that we're talking about. Usually those are around the 5 to 7 year time frame within that. When I first came on site, what made me really nervous is that we didn't have this backed up anywhere. Heaven forbid we ever have an issue where, something would happen that we'd lose these, fire, who knows what. We have lost all that history. And our community depends on that. It's not uncommon for us to get phone calls every week asking for verification of fill in the blank. And so I appreciated Mike's work with the state to ensure that we're going way beyond what we need to do for backup. We're doing it actually 2 or 3 different places to ensure that it's safe.
Thank you. Sure. That's a good answer. Any other questions or comments before we move forward? Does anybody like to make a motion reference this request?
I'll make a motion to approve the document scanning agreement between HCCSC and Ausdall and Farrar as presented.
And a second?
Second.
Thank you, Mr. Melcher, Ms. Heim. Any further questions or comments? We'll go ahead and vote on the motion.
I know this probably isn't the right time but while we were waiting on it and while Mr. Sumpter's here, I didn't know if you wanted to have him talk about I saw it came out in the news media about the data breach.
Yes.
And how great we are and fortunate.
Yep. Mike's actually going to comment on that during the
Motion passes 6-0. Go ahead, Mr.
school board.
Okay.
At the very end. Mike's going to comment on that.
Thank you, Mr. Sumpter.
Yep. Aren't you, Mike? Sure. Yes. Yes.
We'll move on to H2, November 2024 finance reports.
Yes, pitch hitting for Mrs. Smith here. This evening, we're going to walk through our 4 major budgeted funds, which are the Education Fund, the Debt Service Fund, the Operations Fund, and the Rainy Day Fund. So we're going to start with the Education Fund. You're very familiar with these charts and graphs that we do on a consistent basis at our board meetings. This right now is for November of 2024. We are working quickly on finishing out the fiscal year of 24, and we'll have January 27th meeting, have those reports for you also. But in the Education Fund, you can see there that this report shows that in November, we were 91.53% through the year. Revenue received was 90%, and budget expenses was just shy. There you can see of 76%. As customary for us, this fund is right on target for that time of the year. So I'm very pleased with our budgeting and our expenditures and how we're working through the year with that. Next, we have the Debt Service Fund. Here, this report doesn't show very much activity due to the main times. It shows activity basically in June and December. When we do next month's, you will see that will obviously change there as we receive the majority of our property taxes during those time frames. Okay. The operations fund, this report only shows about 56% of the revenue received. This is also because this is a property tax revenue fund, and the majority of the revenue comes in June and again December. However, we are at about, as it say, 69% expended, and so again, we're right on track for where we should be for this time of year. The next fund is the rainy day fund. Remember, this fund was established from the excess fund transfers from other funds. The 1.5 million budget is strictly for the new administration office here in Huntington. 81% has been expended from that budget, which is right on target. As you can see, there's been a lot of activity going on there, and they are, Chuck, I believe, scheduled to be done at the end of this month. Is that right? Pretty close to it? Pretty close to it there then. So we're anticipating a move in the latter part of February at this point in time. We'll bring more information out to you hopefully at the next meeting. Next, we'll review the following two customary funds. The first one is food service and curricular materials. Let's go through food service, why it's there. This is a fiscal year fund that runs July through June, which is a little different than the rest. The month of November does not show the federal reimbursement, as we didn't get it until December. So please don't be alarmed by that. Other than that, this fund is right on target, and we wanted you to be aware of that. It was important for you as a board that you wanted to see this food service fund, and so I'm glad that you're keeping eyes on that. Next, we have the Curricular Materials Fund. This fund continues to show a $2.3 million balance. This is until the next adoption comes through. Now, Becky's been talking to us about this, so please understand this is going to be a change. That another reminder that this fund that will be transferred to the Education Fund at the 2024 year end due to legislation. So this is going to roll in to the Education Fund, and we just want to make sure that we're continuing to bring that to your attention. Next, we're going to show the Education and Operations Fund historical, and so this is the 5-year. Becky and I like to do this. So trends, actually 6, Education Fund. So we've highlighted November here for you in order for you to see that the last 6 years in comparison of the same time of year. The balance will go down in December after the Education Fund to the Operation Fund transfer of less than 15% approved by law takes place. So I'm just bringing that to your attention. But Becky and I like to just compare months to months, so in case we absolutely see anything out of order, it will draw our attention to that. We have not found that up to this point. And then the Operations Fund, you will also notice that November is highlighted to see the comparison over the years. December will be more of a picture based on the property taxes that come in, and after the Ed to Operations transfer is completed. Just a reminder to you that the December financials will be done here in the next month or so when we do the year-end presentation. So what I'm seeking for your approval of this evening is the November 2024 Board Financial Report. I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Thank you, Mr. Trout. Does anybody like to make a motion regarding the November 2024 finance reports?
Recommend we approve the November 2024 financial reports as presented.
Thank you, Mr. Wall. Any second? Thank you, Mr. McClellan. Any questions or comments before we vote? Mr. Trout, you must have done really well.
Well, thank you.
Hearing nothing, we'll vote. Probably need to thank Mrs. Smith for her good notes.
I do.
Motion passes unanimously, 6-0. We move on to H3, temporary support between HCCS and Huntington County EMA, Huntington County Highway Department.
Board, Mr. Trout, and our public, this is an informational item. We are temporarily partnering with the Huntington County Highway Department and the Huntington County EMA due to an issue they experienced over what would be our Christmas break with their fueling station. Billing has been set up with each of these entities and are being taken care of through our business department. Fuel supply is more than adequate for HCCSC and our needs, and I really want to commend Vanessa Fields, our transportation director, for her communication with multiple entities due to their issue they experienced. It's worked out very well so far on a temporary basis, and we are certainly proud to help from Huntington County Community Schools when asked to do so with both of these entities. I will update you, or Mr. McLaughlin will, at meetings in the future when their fueling stations have been fixed, remedied, and ready to go back to them. But did want, just for informational item, to let you know we are partnering with them and making sure the billing is adequate, proper, and state board approved, and all those things are in place.
Thank you, Mr. Brimberry. I can tell you that this is the way communities are supposed to work, stepping up and helping when there's trouble. And I know this was certainly an unexpected thing the county was dealing with, so thank you, and thank Mrs. Fields and Mr. Trout for
Yeah, and I would
generosity.
add, Tim, Vanessa put in some long hours very quickly in her communications with multiple entities here, including us, to make sure this went as seamless as possible. And I thank Mr. Trout, the board members, and her for helping out in the community.
Thank you, Mr. Brimberry. Anybody have any questions or comments before we move on?
No, I was just going to also reiterate what Tim had said, that I'm proud of the administration to be able to get this done and help them out as quickly as we did.
Thank you, Mr. Wall. We're going to move on. I-1, policies, policy 6250 requiring ADM counts for the purpose of state funding and verification of residency for membership. Mr. Trout.
Yes,
I'm
this
sorry,
is,
Mr. Brimberry? Or
no,
Mr.
this
Trout?
is me. This is just a first reading this evening. I'm asking you, we will be bringing this back to you to January 27th meeting for a second and final reading. This is just keeping up to date on this topic of ADM counts for proposed of state funding and verification of residency. So we are paid by the pupil, by the state of Indiana, and this is just, we are continuing constantly to update this policy to make sure that we're in line with all state requirements. So this is just a first reading only, but I'd be happy to answer any questions you may have, but we'll bring it back to the next meeting for final approval.
Thank you, Mr. Trout. Any questions for Mr. Trout? It says new policy for ADM counts. Is the state changed? What has changed, I guess, do you know?
Well,
I know it's loaded.
yeah, it's just verifying, even though students can go to any school district that they want to go to, we still have to go through the verification process for each and every student. And so this is just keeping us up to speed with those requirements for state funding. Okay?
Great, thank you.
Yep.
Move on then to I-2, Volume 34, Number 2, Policy Packet.
Yeah, I just want to thank Cindy Gray for continuing to help and assist and lead me through this process. Quite frankly, she's been awesome. There's a series of school board policies there for first reading that covers a variety of topics, okay? And so we are just bringing those out in front of you tonight. This gives you a couple of weeks to ask us any questions, offer any suggestions along the way, but we are upgrading that. Now, for Aaron, who is new to the board, you will see that these are in rough draft form. We show you our markups. We show you a lot of pieces with this. When we come back with the second reading, it'll be the cleaned up version, okay? But for the first readings, we will always show you the adjustments we're making, the markups, the deletions, all those pieces along the way. This is a very tedious and time-consuming task. We have, as you know, over the last few months, updated several, and we continue that process today. So I'll be happy to answer any questions, but like many of you do have done it with me in the past, you'll call me and say, explain this one school board policy and this section. And so don't be hesitant to do that as you work your way through these pieces, okay?
Thank you, Mr. Trout. Any questions for Mr. Trout or any comments? Hearing none, we'll move on to item J, discussion by board members. J1, review of process of interview and election of District 2 school board seat.
You have a statement to read there.
Regarding the selection of a new member of the HCCS Board of School Trustees representing District 2, Mr. Matt Roth sent his notice of resignation from the HCCS Board of School Trustees to the clerk of the Huntington County Circuit Court on Thursday, December 16th, 2024. The 30-day timeline to fill the position started on that date. Soon thereafter, the HCCS Board gave public notice of the member vacancy for District 2 and solicited applications from those persons interested in filling the remainder of Mr. Roth's term, ending December 31st, 2026. A total of 13 community members applied for the open District 2 school board seat. The requirements to be eligible to interview for the open school board seat essentially are an adult residing within the designated geographic boundaries of HCCS District 2. 5 of the applicants did not meet that residency guidelines. 8 applicants met the residency guidelines. However, since the application deadline last Friday, January 10th, 2 candidates have withdrawn their names from consideration. The remaining 6 qualified candidates will be interviewed by HCCS Board on Tuesday, tomorrow, January 14th, 2025, and will begin at 6 o'clock here in this where we sit right now. 6 candidates are Colin Davis, James Detmer, Christopher Hoffman, Cynthia Kiefer, Deborah Miller, and Hank Miller. These interviews will be open to the public and will be live streamed. The interview process and procedure. This interview sequence will be determined by random draw by board counsel, Mr. Wiley. 20 minutes will be allotted for each interview. Moderator Joe Wiley will ask all candidates the same questions with follow-up allowed by board members. Selection of a new member to represent District 2 happens like this. At the conclusion of the interviews, the board will have time to discuss their individual support of any candidate. After all discussion is concluded, the balloting will start. Mrs. Gray will make a roll call of each board member, and the members will indicate who they support in the appointment. The successful candidate must receive 4 affirmative votes in order to be appointed. If no candidate receives a majority of 4 votes, a second roll call will occur after additional discussion. For the second and any subsequent ballots, the order for the roll call will rotate, essentially so the same person isn't leading every time. The process for balloting will continue until a 4-vote majority is received. If no candidate receives 4 affirmative votes after multiple ballots, an impasse will be declared, and the selection will be turned over to the judge of the Huntington County Circuit Court. Our community is reminded that this process and timeframes for these procedures are governed by the Indiana Code and HCCS policy bylaws. The new District 2 school board member will be sworn in on January 14th or January 27th at the latest. I think I'm going to speak for myself and maybe for the board too, but we are looking forward to the process. Really encouraged and excited about the fact that we had 13 people want to be a part of the board. I hope the community tunes in and listens in to what happens tomorrow night, and I'm sure we will find a very good candidate. Anyone else? Comments?
Mike, would you, I know we've been asked, Mr. Melcher asked me this evening here at the board meeting, and I've got a couple other inquiries. There's been a lot of media attention drawn to the PowerSchool data breach recently. Do you just want to, would you just talk to where we as a district stand in that process, and then we'll take any comments or questions from the board then, okay?
Absolutely. The PowerSchool data breach was massive, probably the largest I've ever known, and probably will exceed the largest probably ever of the theft of student data. Right now, they're looking at between 80 to 90 million student records that were confiscated, and that's only student records. That doesn't include all the teacher information or other information that other districts keep in there as well. A very, very large strategic move on those people. The districts that were compromised the most were districts that had securities that maybe, for a lack of better terms, were not as stringent as what I feel we have had traditionally here at Huntington. We were not affected. Now, we have one thing going for us. All of our data and PowerSchool databases are on-prem. They're right here in our corporation. The corporations that were compromised were in PowerSchool's cloud, which is very bad. They are going through and trying to identify how much data was taken. Right now, they're looking at near petabytes of data that was taken over a 7-day period of time. The perpetrator for PowerSchool came in, hung out for about 7 days, took what they wanted, and they were the ones that notified PowerSchool of what they were doing. Now, this takes into question, where are their securities? What are they doing? How do they recover? PowerSchool has been very forthright, very forward in the fact that they're taking steps to secure their environment more and trying to help every corporation they can to recover. Now, as a rule of thumb, as tech directors in the state and nationwide, we are trained, you never pay for ransomware. You take that money that you have and you invest it into your own infrastructure and you protect yourself. And we started that journey, continued that journey 3 years ago when I got here. And so we've kept building upon what was done in the past, and we've taken steps to block that. And I feel that because of those steps we've taken, we have protected ourselves, and we've been lucky. By no means, we're just lucky. I've had the fortunate or unfortunate opportunity to go through 2 ransomware attacks at another district, and frankly, I have no desire to go through number 3, especially a district this large that has so much data. So we're doing everything we can to double down. PowerSchool I don't know what their direction will be, how they're going to recover from that. I don't know what they'll do. It does make me a little nervous on their future, right? Here we have all of our initiatives and everything into PowerSchool, and me being pessimistic, I have to think, well, what's plan B? What do we do if they're not around one day? So hopefully it doesn't come to that. But they have been very forward, been very forthright, letting us know we are fortunate. Many other districts were not. There were social security numbers stolen. There was all types of data that was taken from that theft. And it's very unfortunate.
But to reiterate, we were not affected by this attack.
We were not.
Because, to just say it again, I know we're repeating ourselves.
It's
but
okay,
just,
sure.
Yep, but just because.
Right. So 3 years ago, we did a massive upgrade with all of our firewall and all of our security policies and stuff. We blocked Ukraine, Russia, China, many countries outside the United States. The IP address or the attacker was from Ukraine, and that's how he invaded PowerSchool. We block Ukraine, so even if he tried to attempt to get in, he wouldn't be able to. So we started there. That was only the beginning with our firewall. Since then, we've partnered with the state of Indiana, where we've received probably close to $120,000 worth of free CrowdStrike software. And we will take on that cost coming into this next budget year gladly, which should come out to maybe about $20,000 a year. State of Indiana worked with Department of Homeland Security for a grant to help every federal program there is in the state of Indiana. We were in group 2 that received those relatively early. So we've taken many steps to prevent or to be as proactive as we can. The last thing I ever want to do is sit back and have to come to you and say, yep, they got me, they got us, here's what they did. No way. I'm the other way. I want to take it to them, be proactive. What can I do to see, hear, where is it coming from? That way on the day that there is an attempt, it's thwarted in minutes rather than weeks or days.
So we did not lose any student data.
No student data was lost. No teacher data was lost. Nothing was lost.
Okay. Other questions, comments? Sorry, Mike, go ahead.
No.
Okay, any other comments, questions for Mr. Sumpter in this area? But I know a couple of you have asked me, and that's why when Mike was here, I wanted him to take an opportunity to tell you.
I'd just like to say, you said we were lucky. I've learned that, the harder you work, the luckier you get.
Yeah.
Luck's preparation and opportunity. So I appreciate your efforts, and we're very thankful.
Thanks.
And if we're being honest with you, over the last year, this wasn't the first time that we've had to deal with a significant attack. And so far, so good with all of the implementation and all the things that we're doing. And I'm grateful for Mike, your team, and what we're trying to do to stay ahead. This is a constant battle.
It is a constant battle. You get tired of it after a while. It is for us in IT. Protecting our assets are paramount, and there's nothing more valuable than the digital assets.
And I feel so for so many school districts and our colleagues who are having to address this situation right now. So I just didn't want you to think that since we're not talking about it, that we were not fully aware. But I hope this gives you a little bit better insight into this pretty prominent newsworthy issue at this point in time. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Sumpter.
Thank you, Mike. Any other comments or questions about that? Move on to J2, items of discussion by board members. Anybody have something they'd like to add?
Seeing as I got reelected as board liaison, I thought it'd be a great time to just bring up a couple conversations about state legislature came back into session, I believe at the beginning of this week. Some of the key priorities that have come out of the legislature are some key interesting bills that have come out. There is a bill out there to dissolve some school boards. We are not going to meet that criteria. I know one of them is IPS, but it's something to keep an eye on, because if they're going to start they're going to start with the large ones at some point, that may come into us, so it's something to keep an eye on. The concept of partisan school board elections is back on the agenda. That disappeared for a while, but is back on the plate. And then also just property tax reform. I'll keep you updated on that as stuff comes around. So will Indiana School Board Association as well. But I would also call out that both Andy Zay and Larissa Sweet have their constituent surveys out there right now. I'd appreciate it if all of you would take a few minutes to go find them on their websites. If I remember, I'll try to forward you a link to both of those and take a few minutes to fill those out. It's one of the many ways that we can give some signals to our state representatives about how we feel about it here in Huntington County, and want to do that. And then just as, again, another reminder, I will be signing up and trying to attend the Indiana State House Day on February 18th. It's a good time if anybody else wants to go. The board president and the legislative liaison are always invited to go down. It's no cost to us, and they do provide us an opportunity to sit down and have lunch with some of the legislatures. I have not yet been able to get either Mr. Zay or Mrs. Sweet to be able to join me for lunch, but I continue to try to get that done, and I'm working at my ways to try to make sure that happens. So it's always fun, and it's nice because we sit in At the meeting, we sit with other board members from our district that meets us. So that's how I've gotten to know some of the board members from Whitley County and some other counties around us. So it's a fun time. It's a great opportunity to sit and talk to other school board members and listen to what's going on down at the state.
The first one he brought up, I just sent that information to Mr. Brimberry, and he, in the near future, is going to come and give you a report on Huntington County. It's also fascinating because you can not only look at us, but surrounding districts and the percent of students that live in their district that are not going to your school district. I think that you will be very pleased of the comparison of how we compare against some of the school districts around us, because in some cases that's not the perception. But I believe I just sent it to Chuck today to up in the near future is to give you that report. The threshold that the legislators are currently working on is 50%. That's those 4 or 5 districts, I can't remember how many, that are falling underneath that category at this point in time. Ryan and I are going to be participating. You want to talk about that just briefly, Ryan, as you're going down that road?
Yeah, sure. So Saturday, and this is one of the things that I would also thank Mr. Carl. That was actually my next topic, but thanks for the nice lead-in, is the local new board member orientation up in Fort Wayne. I know Mr. Carl can't attend that one. He's going to attend the virtual one, but we've been reached out. Mr. Trout and myself and 2 other board members will be sitting on a panel at the end of that session to talk about board and superintendent relationships and how that goes. I look forward to that. We're actually, I believe it's Warsaw is the other one that we're doing it. So it'll be a fun time to go up there. I plan on actually going up and attending just a little bit early just to meet some of the new board members in my role as District 3 board director. So it looks like a fun time. And I will also point out the last little bit is I am going to apply, and I hope Mr. Allen takes the moment to apply, that at the end of the month, ISBA has a new board president certification process that they're rolling out. It's a nice opportunity to learn how to be a board president and find out some of the stuff that's going on. I know there's been some slow turnout, but I'm hoping after everyone gets organized that starts filling up as well. It's just an opportunity to see what's going on, and again, an opportunity to network and meet other board members and board presidents around the state. And that's the ISBA update.
Thank you, Mr. Wall. Anyone else have anything for the board?
In the near future, can we get a tour of the new family and consumer science?
Yes, we just brought that up today. We are going to be holding an open house for the areas of the high school, which would include this area. There are still some members of our community who have not been in this area even, but this area, the science rooms, family consumer science, and we will also at the exact same time, be doing an open house of the new central office. So we're shooting for a March date to happen. There's going to be we also want to coordinate with the science teachers at the high school, because Chuck, you want to touch on the planetarium that we're going to do some demonstrations.
We want to make sure that during the open house, not only is our community and our board and everybody able to see it, but we want you to experience some of the investments you've made in the planetarium and those areas. So we're working with some of the teachers. I just talked to them today in terms of what date in March might be available,
Right.
A couple of dates to send to Cindy and John, and we are super excited. I stopped by and saw Mr. Villanueva, and he cannot wait to get our public and you, and he even mentioned in the future, I talked to Jay Peters about maybe some of our elementary kids touring that particular facility to get them excited about science. And so we're working on it hard, and we're excited to have our public and you in there.
So as soon as we can get that date set, we're going to do all of those areas at one time. Just a sidebar on that, Kenny told me today that some of the things that he put together on the mural, where he's been putting that out to the public, has had over 40,000 views. So the mural going around the science area has been very well received along the way. As a matter of fact, some of us haven't aged a bit, and
Truth.
yeah, in several decades, I guess would be the place. But it has been very well received as we have tried to honor the history, the great history of this school district and this high school along the way. So if you haven't had a chance to do that, I would encourage you to also go take a look at that along the way. And to give credit where credit was due, that's almost entirely, and I mean this, entirely Terry Thornsberry. Chuck finally told me to leave him alone because I've been quizzing him about what are we doing with the walls, what are we doing with the walls. And I kind of got chewed out by Chuck one day to say, please leave Mr. Thornsberry alone. I've seen parts of it, and you're going to love it. And so Chuck, truly, he has been a quiet person behind the scenes, but that's truly his gift.
It was literally his gift back to Huntington North for his unbelievable experience here. There are more than 400 pictures on the mural, and I would also tell you it took, I say, hundreds of hours to put that together by Terry, and there is, I'm not aware of another high school that I personally or Pat or John or Jay have been in that has that history as you walk in. So unbelievable gift from of the amount of hours it took from Terry to donate back to his high school.
And he said it. I mean, donate. So please understand, he has quietly behind the scenes done that, which is an incredible gift to us back from him. The next time he's here, he probably will not forgive me for saying that publicly, but this was truly his gift to the high school. So we're very appreciative of Terry.
I know that it was built up that there was this big thing coming out there, and it certainly was worth waiting for. It really looks nice. Anything else for the good of the group?
After I got done with the SBA, I just wanted to say on January 4th, I attended the girls' holiday tournament, which happened to be Sue Forgey and Bill Forgey's last athletic event for Huntington North High School. I thank them for myself for being that, but they have spent a lot of time in athletics and within the high school itself of all the work that they've done, and I know Sue and Bill will both be missed, but I wanted to make sure and let you all know that Sue is still going to be around. She's still going to help us through graduation one last time. She told me she's also coming back for a couple of state testing things, but I think we're losing a great employee, but I wish them both well on their next adventures.
Very good, thank you. Anything else? I'll take a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second. All those in favor? We're adjourned.